Right, this was intended to be a post for Facebook, but it ended up a bit long, so I thought I'd record an audio version. Yeah. So, apologies for any background noises. My kids and family have just filled up on some nice fatty meat and they're out enjoying the sun right underneath the window. So, if there's any shouting and splashing from the paddling pool, do excuse that. Right, this is my rant. Stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives. It's everywhere. We're locked down, with news reports on this pandemic spewing out of the media 24/7. But I'd like to introduce a new version. Eat fatty meat, get plenty of sun, protect the NHS, save lives. Why? It's my little fantasy to imagine what news reports would look like if the media actually reported on the real pandemic, chronic disease, while we were locked down and really drilled into people the actual problem. Let's set aside any discussion on whether this is a virus or an exosome, whether masks are any use, whether this is anything more than seasonal flu, whether Fauci and Gates are arch villains or saviours, whether the lockdown is worth the collateral damage, or if it was intended as a global financial reset, whether death figures are inflated or why goats and pawpaws are testing positive. These issues are very complicated, and they're dividing us, distracting us again from the real health crisis, the many pandemics of various diseases that are and have been happening for a long time due to misinformation on diet and lifestyle from such organisations as the WHO and governments. If you want to get deep into all the other issues, follow our many free COVID video discussions at thehumanunleashed.com. Right now, I want to take you on an imaginary journey around various patients. Some of these are based on actual things that we've seen. Some are kind of composites, but they're pretty typical. Pretending for a moment that this was what we were seeing on the TV. Just imagine how many lives would be saved if we were. And I'm just talking about the UK here. Excuse me. As a disclaimer, I'm not criticising any doctors, nurses, care workers, teachers, parents or relatives who I might mention here. I'm merely having a pop at the terrible health information they are educated by higher powers to act upon, without which the chronic pandemics would be a fraction of what they are, and any coronavirus would be no more than a sniffle if there were no comorbidities. You'll forgive me if I get some of the figures slightly wrong. I've done my best, and I suspect they are at least as accurate as any other figures we might be hearing these days. So, we begin our programme today by visiting John in hospital. Unfortunately, he's come in to have his foot amputated owing to complications from type 2 diabetes. He's only 51. Previously, he's had a couple of toes removed, but the doctor did warn him he might be back. John has been joking with us that he's been starving since he got here this morning. He hasn't eaten for about 2 hours, and he's been told to eat plenty of complex carbs to keep his blood sugar stable. Never mind, he's asked for pizza and chips with ice cream and jelly to follow. They usually seem to have that option, and it's easier than actually reading the menu, since his retinal detachment made it hard to see small print. He does know that he needs to avoid protein, though, because his kidneys are starting to fail, and everyone knows meat is bad for the kidneys. There are almost 5 million people with diabetes in the UK, and that's just the ones who have been diagnosed. It's said over 500 a week die from complications. Treating diabetes costs the NHS $15 billion a year, 10% of its budget. Diabetes prevention or reversal rate with the correct advice? 100%. Nobody needs to get diabetes. We apologise profusely. We were wrong about diet and lifestyle and have misled you all for decades. Eat fatty meat, get plenty of sun, protect the NHS, save lives. Next on our hospital tour, we stop at the cardiac ward to see Dave. Dave is 47 and has had his second heart attack. After his first one, he stopped drinking and smoking and started following the government's dietary advice, replacing meat and saturated fats with healthy whole grains, low-fat spreads and vegetable oils. He can't understand why it's happened again. Following that boring diet has been hard, but he's stuck to it. so he can see his kids grow up. Hopefully the operation tomorrow to put stents in will sort it out and he won't have to have bypass surgery, like his brother did, the year before he died. Oh well, hope for the best. I guess it's just rotten luck that it runs in the family. Just the genetic short straw, eh? 170,000 people die from cardiovascular issues in the UK each year. Almost all of these are preventable. We apologise profusely. We were wrong about diet and lifestyle and have misled you all for decades. Eat fatty meat, get plenty of sun, protect the NHS, save lives. Next, it's off to oncology, where we visit Janet. She's just 36. A small breast tumour that she had removed has since recurred and metastasised to her lungs and liver. That last round of chemo was brutal. She lost a lot of weight and her hair fell out, but no worries. Look on the bright side, they have some lovely headscarves. Janet has been told that she has to keep her weight up, and she doesn't have much appetite. At least she can eat all her favourites because the oncologist said diet doesn't have any bearing on cancer. Maybe she can pop out to the vending machine in the corridor later to get some processed GMO corn snacks, a few bars of chocolate and a can of Coke. That should tide her over until the sandwiches come around at lunchtime. Janet says she hopes there are some vegetarian options because she's been told that meat is carcinogenic. If not, she can pick the ham out and just have the bread and lettuce. She was also told that her vitamin D was very low, but she thinks that's preferable to exposing herself to the cancer-causing rays of the sun. She has always been very diligent with the sunscreen. Sadly, soon after we filmed this report, Janet passed away. Her relatives are very grateful for the wonderful care she had in hospital. And they're organising a charity cake bake for cancer research. One day, they say, they will beat this dreadful disease. Cancer treatments cost the NHS $8 billion a year. There are 376,000 new cases every year and 165,000 deaths. Although cheekily, I would argue that most of those are from the treatments. How many of those deaths are preventable? I'm not going to get into trouble by even estimating because it's blasphemy to say that cancer can reverse or is even preventable. But I'll let you decide. We apologise profusely. We were wrong about diet and lifestyle and have misled you all for decades. Eat fatty meat, get plenty of sun, protect the NHS, save lives. Lastly, we are off to visit Elsie in a typical care home. Elsie has been sitting in her own excrement, shouting obscenities and occasionally throwing a handful of poo at the wall or at one of the carers, who are doing their very best to keep up. As so many staff are off sick or just frightened of this bug that's going around. Of course, Elsie is not like this by nature. She was, until relatively recently, a proud, intelligent woman. A loving mother and grandma who had survived a world war and many other challenges. Unfortunately, her brain no longer runs effectively on glucose and needs animal fats to operate. Tragically, none of the staff have been told this. So Elsie continues to deteriorate on the high-carb care home diet. The carers lovingly clean her up and sit her down with a cup of tea and some biscuits. Ooh, and there's some of that nice Battenberg cake left, Elsie's favourite. That should keep her happy for a while. They will go nicely with that saucer of Smarties she's got. Oh, wait a minute. They're not Smarties. They are a horrific cocktail of drugs that even the medical profession admit are totally ineffective for dementia. Little do the carers know that this is Elsie's last day on earth. She will die in the early hours, alone, because her relatives are not allowed to come and see her due to this bug that has killed a few people here and there. Hasn't it? Not sure, really, but best be safe. Come to think of it, Elsie did cough a couple of times. Maybe we'll bung COVID on her death cert. There are almost 1 million people in the UK with dementia, and it's said to account for 1 in 10 deaths. It costs the NHS over $25 billion a year. How many cases would be preventable if the NHS knew that the brain can run perfectly well on ketones? A fuck of a lot. We apologise profusely. We were wrong about diet and lifestyle and have misled you all for decades. Eat fatty meat, get plenty of sun, protect the NHS, save lives. I can't even bring myself to make up a scenario about the kids with ADHD, Asperger's or autism. At school they work under artificial light and Wi-Fi, get taught about diet from the government's ridiculous Eat Well plate, and are constantly given sugary snacks and sweets as rewards. Then when they become difficult to manage, there's always Ritalin to bend their brain chemistry to our will. And another bag of Haribo. Sweets are part of the Eat Well plate after all, so it can't do any harm, eh? At least they had their cereal for breakfast, and they do love meatless Mondays because it's so cool to be vegan. These are the real pandemics. And if we were reminded of cases like those every 5 minutes on TV like we are about COVID, people would start to see the real picture of what's going on. And compared to all the deaths from chronic disease, it would be hard to even notice the odd coronavirus floating around. So the next time you're out clapping for the NHS on your doorsteps like performing seals, marking yourselves out as obedient global citizens to the government grown-ups who have our best interests at heart, at least clap for what the NHS are really up against: a massive wave of chronic disease caused by genocidal misinformation. So, once more, we apologise profusely. We were wrong about diet and lifestyle and have misled you all for decades. Eat fatty meat, get plenty of sun, and while you're at it, take that fucking stupid muzzle off, get some fresh air into your lungs and give someone a hug. If they've signed the relevant consent form, of course. Protect the NHS, save lives. Thank you.